This podcast is sponsored by the Fireman Moving Company. The Fireman Moving Company is the official moving company of WKU Athletics. Not only can they be trusted to move all the coaches in and out of Western, but they can move you anywhere nationwide. The Fireman Moving Company is owned and operated by firemen and is founded by WKU alumni. If you're looking to move sometime soon, give them a call at 270-791-1755 and get yourself a free quote.
Welcome to Topper Talk, your number one Western Kentucky athletics podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Moffitt, and I'm joined by co-host Tyler Bailey. Hilltopper Nation, whether it's happening on the hill or on the road, grab those red towels, stand up and cheer, because it's up next on Topper Talk.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for downloading and listening to another episode of the Topper Talk podcast. We are your number one source for WKU sports news and information, and we're a proud member of the College Huddle podcast community. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media platforms. Definitely, I would recommend Twitter over the others if you're just choosing one. That's going to be our main source of just sharing news and information as it happens in real time. And then also make sure you slide over to our YouTube channel at Topper Talk Podcast. Give us a subscribe over there, like and comment on the new episodes as they come out every single week. Got Tyler here with me, man. We've got a big victory recap to dive into. You about ready?
Yeah, boy, let's get into it. Let's talk about this victory.
Before we dive into this convincing victory over Sam Houston, we got to get caught up with our Red Towel wrap up, which catches us up with all the news and information we missed since we last recorded. So, Tyler, hit us with that Red Towel wrap up.
All right, so this season, Conference USA announced game day initiatives around improved instant replays and the addition of player availability reports.
Yeah, we had heard about the player availability reports a couple weeks ago and shared that on Twitter. The improved instant replays, I guess the jury's still out on that. There were, a couple replays at the game. Didn't seem like they were streamlined or any faster yet, but hopefully as the season goes on, that becomes a little bit more fluid and just quicker results on the field and less delay in the game. And then the player availability reports. Oddly enough, Tyson Hilton did not submit one for the Sam Houston game. Supposed to be submitted 3 hours before the game, but he didn't submit one. So I don't know if he's just playing mind games or if everyone was just available. I don't know, but obviously we'll keep up with those as the season goes and share those whenever we are able.
Maverick McIver was named to the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award watch list and the Senior Bowl Top 300 watch list.
Yeah, the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award, that recognizes the best player out of the state of Texas, which is pretty neat because we had Bailey Zappi that won that award in 2021 when he had that historic season. And then obviously the Senior Bowl watch list is a pretty exclusive and nice recognition for him. Obviously, if he has a great season and then gets to compete at the Senior Bowl, that will really help his odds and chances of getting in front of more NFL talent and hopefully ended up in the draft and getting drafted. So best of luck and congrats to Maverick.
This next one ain't really exactly WKU news, but Conference USA baseball news. Dallas Baptist announced they are joining the Pac-12 in 2027.
Yeah, I really hate to see them depart. They're only in the conference in baseball because I believe it's UTEP that doesn't have a baseball program. The other members, so but they're just a solid year in year out top 25 team. Just a really good program, and it really sucks that Conference USA is losing them. I guess it makes it easier for us that are staying to possibly win the conference, but just sucks to lose one of the better programs in our baseball conference. So best of luck to them whenever they get to move to the pack.
Moving on to WKU soccer, they beat Jackson State to a tune of 1-0.
Yeah, I'd like to see them continuing their winning ways. Yeah, I remember last week they had that big 10-0 victory, and then continue that with another shutout victory against Jackson State. So keep on winning, ladies. We love to see that.
WKU volleyball, they were voted in first place in the Conference USA preseason media poll. Callie Bauer, Olivia Skidmore, and Izzy Vanderwild were named to the all-conference team.
Yeah, what more can you say about Travis Hudson? He reloads. Even after losing Kaylee Cox, who was the preseason and postseason Conference USA Player of the Year, also lost a couple other seniors as well. To reload and still be the number one, picked by the media is just impressive. UTEP worth noting is right behind them in the media poll. They're going to be a really solid team this year. And then congratulations to the three ladies that were recognized on the all conference team. Definitely well deserved.
And the WKU basketball non-conference schedule was released.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up on the screen if you're watching the video version on YouTube. I'm not going to run over this just yet and comb over it. When we get closer to basketball season and we start talking about basketball preview and combing over the roster and all the new guys and the schedule, both conference and non-conference, we'll talk about this a little bit more. Most of these games we already knew about. Obviously, the battle for Atlantis right there in the middle of it. Kind of a lot of usual suspects on there. One thing I can say is the schedule is really travel friendly. There's not any game that you can't make it to that's not more than a couple hours away if you really want to go to all these games. So travel friendly schedule. Here's some people moaning and groaning about who it is in the name department, but I think overall it's a good schedule, and I'm excited for basketball season to get here.
Talking about a pro top here, Elijah Young was released by the Kansas City Chiefs, but he was picked up by the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, so the roster cut day is this coming Tuesday, August 26th. That's when NFL teams have to get down to their 53-man official roster. Some of those cuts are already being made. Elijah Young was released by the Kansas City Chiefs. You hate to see that and hear that, but it's always a good sign when he was picked up pretty quickly by the Buffalo Bills. So big congratulations to him, and obviously we'll share the other pro tops as those cuts and roster moves are made.
Talking about roster move, let's talk about some WKU baseball rosters. They announced the signings of infielder JP Acosta, catcher Ian Wynn, infielder outfielder Logan Luckett, and pitcher Gage Olson. WKU baseball also got a commitment from the class of 26 pitcher Thomas Bagsby.
Yeah, it feels like the baseball roster is starting to come together. After the season this past year, in whatever that was, May, June, when the transfer portal opened, just a ton of guys hit the portal and went elsewhere. But we slowly have started to rebuild that roster, and really excited for what Coach Rarden and Coach Neffendorf over there are doing. I feel really confident about their eye for talent and the fact that they'll put it together and keep us competitive in Conference USA.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Red Tower Wrap Up. Moff, back to you, dog.
Yeah, man, good stuff as always. Just a lot of good news and some new toppers coming to campus and some pro top news and just good stuff all around. I really enjoyed that portion of the episode, but we have got a WKU football game to dive into. As we just had a game this past Saturday, WKU hosted the Sam Houston Bearcats in front of an announced attendance of 15,312 people, and the temperature was perfect at kickoff time. It was 84 degrees, wasn't too hot, wasn't too much wind, wasn't cool. It was just perfect football weather. And luckily, we were able to secure a convincing 41-24 victory. Personally, I was unable to attend this game due to a medical issue that I am currently dealing with. But Tyler, I know you got to be at the game and on campus and in the house. So I guess talk to me, tell me about how the crowd looked, how the tailgating scene looked, and just the atmosphere around campus for the week 0 game 1.
Well, the tailgating scene was actually really good on South Lawn. People was up there around the dorms when you come in into the valley. They were up there in parking lots down on by Crescent Street and over there where a bunch of the RVs park at. It seemed like it was a real lively group. I saw some Sam Houston people walking into the into the football stadium. But man, once you got there and they announced a number, I was kind of shocked. A lot of students were there. The berm was absolutely filled. It was great seeing the students there. Just wish that more people would have transferred into the stadium, but tailgating seemed like it was popping.
Yeah, from what I saw, not being able to make it, but gave my tickets away to some friends of mine that were able to go, and saw some pictures of the tailgating scene and some of the areas around campus, and looked like tailgating was pretty solid. Really hate that I missed the game, especially being the home opener with such perfect weather. And and obviously it turned out to be a nice victory that was also enjoyed as well. But got to watch it on TV. Just going to run down the the recap of the game. Uh, when the game started, both teams opened with drives that resulted in punts. When we got our second possession, we were able to convert a touchdown on a 26-yard pass from Maverick McIver to Matthew Henry that made the score 7-0. Sam Houston was able to pull ahead on their next couple of possessions when they converted a field goal and had a touchdown of their own. Coming on a busted containment and allowing Hunter Watson to run straight up the middle, untouched for a 55-yard touchdown. They were ahead 10-7, and then WKU responded with a touchdown with Lavelle Wright on a 1-yard run, and then we added two more field goals to take a 20-10 lead going into halftime. Started a little bit slow, but it was nice to see us kind of put on the gas a little bit and have a pretty comfortable lead going into halftime. Tyler, what were your thoughts on the first half of play in this game?
Well, the first few, I guess it was the first drive for Western. There was a lot of drops, which I get it. You're coming off of, fall camp, first real game. You're knocking the rust off. But I mean, Maverick was throwing darts, and the receivers, would just drop them, or it would be overthrown just a little bit. But I mean, and we'll talk about they was able to clean that up, and man, this offense looked great. And yes, it was great going into halftime up 20-10. But we'll talk about what happened after that. But the first half, I was really glad. Yes, the defense gave up one big chunk play there to Hunter when he ran it right up the middle, but that's just one play. A blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
Yeah, I think we were all feeling pretty good at half when we were up 20-10. Maverick, I think he was a little amped up, man. He was throwing some fastballs when you're talking about those passes being dropped. I mean, he was throwing some short and intermediate passes, and he was only throwing the fastball. So, like you said, he was able to calm down and really started clicking there in the second half. But talking about the second half, it probably really couldn't have started any worse for WKU. Sam Houston received the ball first, and they went down and scored pretty quickly, scored a touchdown. And then on the next possession, WKU had Sam Houston forced a fumble on just a big hit on Musa Berry on the sideline, and Sam Houston was able to scoop and score that and return it for a touchdown. So really quickly, 3 minutes into the second half, they had went from a 10-point deficit to having a 24-20 lead just like that. And I think really a lot of us at the game and watching, we're just wondering how we were going to respond to that, just taking a couple punches. But it was nice to see that we responded immediately. We went down and had a scoring drive that ended with a touchdown pass to Katie Hutchinson as he ran in to that front pylon in the end zone to make the score 27-24. Then we held Sam Houston to another punt, and we scored again on a touchdown pass that was a beautiful wheel route to the true freshman running back Marvis Parrish that made the score 34-24. Then we traded punts with Sam Houston, and Sam Houston ultimately threw an interception that Jalen Lewis was able to take away from them. And we added another touchdown on a 4-yard rush by Maverick McIver, who had a little bit of help from his lineman helping him get pushed across the goal line. And that made the score what ended up being the final score at 41-24. I think there was still 8 or 9 minutes left in the half at that point, or left in the game rather. But the teams just ended up trading punts and had a couple of turnovers on downs each, and ended the game that way with that score. So pretty convincing victory. One that, by the score predictions, I just happened to pick the right score, put that on Twitter, not pat myself on the back, but put the video clip up. Just a lucky guess, I guess we'll call it. But WKU moves to 1-0 on the season, and obviously we're 1-0 in Conference USA play, while Sam Houston opens the Phil Longo era at 0-1, and it kind of feels like they're, I don't want to say scrambling, but I think they know that they have a lot of improving to do on both sides of the ball to hopefully remain competitive in Conference USA as the season goes on. So, Tyler, what were your thoughts on the entire, just how the game played out before we jump into some stats?
Well, I was kind of surprised that, they started the second half, 14 unanswered points. I would never would have guessed that the Musa Berry would have coughed the ball up there for that scoop and score, but I mean, it was a
That
pretty
that
good
was a
hit.
hit. That was a
That
lick.
that was a hit. Um, but I mean, once we kind of settled down from that, I felt like the game was under control. For Phil Longo wanting to be kind of an air raid pass heavy offense, he's going to have to get a QB that has an arm. Hunter, he really the only long pass that he really threw was really to us. So he was a great offensive weapon for us. But I feel like once we was able to control their run, we kind of took their weapons away from them, and they just didn't really have an answer from that. But I mean, the game probably couldn't have went any better. Yes, we shown that we had some cleaning up to do, and I feel like we will get better at that. But I'm just going to chalk that up to first game, kind of rustiness. But I feel like we're going to be better and later in the season and here in a few weeks actually.
Yeah, one thing that I like to see, and I talked about it earlier, is how we responded one to that first 3 minutes of the second half when they, two quick scores, all of a sudden we're down. That kind of sucks all the life and energy out of your sideline and all that momentum that you wanted to create. And I liked how we responded with a quick touchdown, forced a punt, and then another quick touchdown. And one of those drives was aided by a really nice long pass and reception to Musa Berry, who kind of shook off that fumble and immediately made up for it with a really nice grab. So really like that we just kept going to him. We didn't lose confidence in him over one fumble. Um, and that was a hit that a lot of guys are going to cough the ball up. I mean, he got popped. It was a textbook tackle, and he dropped the ball. It is what it is. It was right by the sideline. It could have, if it took a Western Kentucky bounce, it could have went out of bounds and we would have been fine. But scoop and score made the game look a little bit closer than what it is. And they didn't score again. If you want to look at it that way, that was their last points of the game after that score by them. Jumping into some player stats first, let's look at the offensive side of the ball. Of course, QB1, Maverick McIver, much hyped coming into the season. I mean, we talked about him just ad nauseum, in the season preview, the quarterback preview, just what our expectations were for him. And he delivered. I mean, he was 33 out of 51 passing on the night, 401 passing yards. He had 3 touchdowns passing. He had 0 interceptions, and he added that rushing touchdown that we talked about earlier. Then you got to talk about true freshman Marvis Parrish. That kind of he had a surprise start at running back. Even though we had heard a lot about him over the summer through fall camp, we had heard that he was a name to watch out for. But I think everyone kind of assumed that one of the upperclassmen. I mean, we've got two fifth-year seniors in George Hart and Lavelle Wright also in the running back room. I think we all kind of assumed one of those two guys was going to be the starting running back, and I think it really says a lot about what Coach Helton and his staff thinks about a true freshman, 18-year-old running back, that was just in high school a few months ago, got the start, got the nod, and then he had a heck of a game. He had 110 total yards from scrimmage. 52 of those were rushing, 58 receiving yards, and he did have that one touchdown on a wheel route. Can't say enough good things about him. Just a heck of a debut for him. And then also we have to talk about wide receiver Matthew Henry. The FCS All-American transfer from Western Illinois. Again, we had talked about him. We almost kind of tried to underplay Matthew Henry. We didn't want the ops to be listening and to know that 17 was going to be that dude. But he came in real quick and made it be known that he's that guy. That back shoulder touchdown catch to open the game scoring was a heck of a catch, man. And he ended the game with 7 receptions for 148 yards. I think it was over 21 yards per catch on average, and then had that one touchdown as well. So, Tyler, man, heck of an offensive performance. Like you said, there was stuff to clean up, stuff we can get better at. And that's really saying a lot for how good this offense was and how good it can be, being how many yards that we had this game and that we put 41 points on the board. Tell me about this offense. What else did you see and who'd you like?
Well, I don't know if we want Maverick to throw 51 passes every game because, later in the season, that's going to take a toll on him. But I'm here for it right now because the dude threw great. you had George Hart. He had 8 attempts for 30 carries on. Uh, I'm sorry, 8 attempts, 30 rushing yards. He did lose 5, so a net of 25. You know, Lavelle Wright, I kind of thought him and George would be starting. It's going to be between them two fighting. But I mean, to have Marvis come out and I was actually sitting up there and I was like, that's not George or Lavelle. And it was a pleasant surprise to see Marvis do that. Um, you know, Maverick, he rushed for 21 yards on 7 attempts. Now some of them probably he was scrambling because he had to, but Musa Berry, he had 6 receptions for 90 yards, long of 48. Um, as you said, Marvis had 6 receptions, 58 yards, 1 touchdown. Great play, by the way. Jarius Mackey had 4 receptions, 35 yards. Katie Hutchinson's 4 receptions, 34 yards, and 1 touchdown. Kelby Williams, 3 receptions, 25 yards. George Hart, he had 1 reception for 4 yards. Lavelle Wright, 1 reception for 4 yards. And then Noah Meyer had 1 reception for 3 yards, which, maybe it's just the way the game was, but I figured he might be more utilized than what he was. But maybe some teams will leave him open and Maverick will get the ball to him. But I mean, overall, the offensive play was great. I mean, I'm not going to complain about our QB throwing for 401 yards. Um, I mean, at one point, I remember looking at it, and he was throwing like maybe 56% completion rating or percentage, but he did get that up, and I think it was in the 60s, in the 60%. So it was great seeing him be able to get that up there.
Yeah, just a heck of a performance by the offense. Can't say enough good things about Maverick and how he led the team. Nice to see him settle in, after kind of a little bit of a hyper start. Threw a couple risky balls that he's just trying to fit them in there, trying to make a play. Obviously, that's stuff that they'll go back and they'll watch and they'll clean that stuff up and try to avoid those risky throws and find the open guys. And then some of the missed catches, again, he's throwing fastballs, drops are going to happen. That is just part of the game. You're not going to complete 100% of your passes. But really enjoyed seeing all the running backs, show that they can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think in this offense, you have to be able to catch the ball, or you're just, you got to be able to catch the ball in the backfield. You got to be able to pass block. If you can't do those two things, you're not going to see the field. And it was nice to see all three running backs out there being productive and having over 100 yards rushing as a team. Love to see that. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, we were led in tackles by Dave Herrard. He had 6 tackles total. 4 of those were solo. Then Anthony Brackenridge had 5 tackles total with 2 tackles for loss. Jaden Gray had 3 tackles with 2 tackles for loss, and he also had a sack. And then Jalen Lewis added our lone interception for the game. And then overall, the defense had 9 tackles for loss. We had 2 total sacks as a team. We had 4 passes defended and 1 interception. It's really hard to take a lot away from the whole effort because we're not really sure just how good the Sam Houston offensive line was. That's kind of my main question. Is our defense that much better, that much improved, especially that front seven, getting a lot of pressure, tackles for loss, sacks, they were just impacting the game a whole lot, making Hunter Watson scramble, making him uncomfortable. But the question is, are we really that good, or is Sam Houston just not as good, maybe as what they hoped and expected to be? But overall, I think we are all very pleased with the defensive effort. Tyler, tell me what you saw. What you like?
Well, I'll tell you, the Machiavelli Malatumo, he had 4 total tackles, 3 assisted tackles, 1 solo. He had 1 tackle for loss, which resulted in 5 yards, and then he was credited with a half a sack for 2-yard loss. Jalen Lewis, he had the 1 interception, 4 total tackles, 2 assists, 2 solo. DeMarco Williams, he had 3 total tackles, 2 assists, 1 solo, and 1 breakup. Harper Holloman, he had 3 total tackles, 2 assisted, 1 solo, and he also had a 1.5 tackle for loss for 4 yards. Jaden Hardy, he had 2 total, 1 assisted, 1 solo. He was credited with a half tackle for loss for 2 yards, and then a half a sack for 2 yards. I mean, Miller Malone, he had one tackle for loss for 1 yard, and then the one total tackle. But dude, our defense, I'm hoping that the Sam Houston offensive line was good and our defense is just back like that, because other than, maybe three total running plays, we really held them down. It was really two chunk running plays that really uh, was over half of Sam Houston's running offense, or rushing offense. But I feel like our defense is good. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. And it's just that Sam Houston doesn't suck, but it is what it is. I'm going to credit us with being good until further notice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just a solid all around effort. And we'll talk a little bit more about those team stats and how, how many of their rushing yards came on just a couple plays and kind of just how good the defense was short of just a couple lapses. And then normally we don't have a lot to say about the special teams in games. Usually that's one of those areas where you're like, you don't want to talk about it, because if you're talking about special teams, there's bad stuff going on and you had some errors. But I think almost every facet of our special teams was just amazing. We only had one special teams blunder. We had that punt return that bounced on the field, and then it bounced up and it hit Katie Hutchinson in the shoulder. Just glanced off of him. Sam Houston recovered that. I don't remember if they've turned that. I think they may have turned that into points. I don't recall off the top of my head, but that was the only blunder. But everything else that we're going to talk about special teams was shining spots. And I want to start with the kickoff specialist, which is Jack Cassidy. He sent every kick through the end zone. There was no kick returns for Sam Houston in this game. It was nice to have him with that big leg sending those kicks out the back of the end zone. That's real refreshing to not have to worry about a big explosive play that could bring them, and try to flip the field or get near midfield. And then our field goal kicker, John Cannon, he was 2 out of 2 on field goals. He had a long of 49, and he was also 5 out of 5 on extra points. And then our punter, Cole Maynard, he had 5 total punts with a 50-yard average and a long of 71 yards. And that 71-yarder, I mean, he boomed it, obviously. And it wasn't one of those kicks that went 50 yards and then hit the turf and then rolled 20. I mean, it probably went 60 of those in the air and then had a small roll and ended up pinning them down at the 3-yard line. So just a heck of a field flipper, a great game. Anytime you're above, usually you're in the mid 40s, low to mid 40s on your punting average. He was at a 50-yard average. I mean, just a heck of a game for him. Then also kick returner DeMarco Williams. He had 4 kick returns with an average of 20.8 yards per return. So, man, just a lot of good stuff on the special teams unit. Tyler, what'd you think about those guys?
Yeah, you talked about the muff punt return, and you'll notice after that happened to KD, there was a lot of fair catches being called, almost almost every time after that for a little bit, which understandable. Whenever I saw that, it took me back to a few years ago whenever that happened, maybe like 2 or 3 times in one season. But I'm glad it was just that only time it happened. But whenever John Cannon came out there, um, and kicked them 49 yard long field goal. The thing was beautiful. I mean, John Cannon is that guy. And then you look at Cole Maynard. As soon as that ball left his foot, if you was in that stadium, you seen it, you knew it was going. It was so pretty, such a pretty punt. I mean, Maynard, dude, that was a great punt. 71 yards. It was awesome. And then DeMarco Williams, I'm glad he's able to get out to an average of 20.8 yards. There was one time I thought he broke it though. He got close and he got pushed out of bounds. But I was hoping that he was going to run that back for 6. But I mean, it just collapsed on him and he couldn't do it. But the special teams, great play by special teams. Other than that one punt return.
Yeah, we'll forgive Katie Hutchinson. It's all right. He made up for it in other aspects of the game with receiving and scoring a touchdown. So we'll forgive Katie. But man, the special teams unit just absolutely showed out. Now we've got a new segment that we're going to talk about in recapping the game, and that's just going to be looking at our keys to victory that we do in the game preview. Both of us always list out 3 of our keys to victory. We're just going to take a look back at those and see how we think we did or how the team did and what we thought we need to do to win this game. So, Tyler, your very first key to victory was limit their ground game. How do you think we did in that facet?
Like I said, other than really two big chunk plays and really on one drive, that McCaskill guy had two big runs. I feel like we've limited their run game really well. Him and Hunter, those were really the only two, uh, I guess, weapons that really was detrimental to us. So once we was able to limit that, obviously Hunter Watson, he can throw the short passes, long passes. He ain't him.
Yeah, I think we did a good job limiting their ground game. I agree with you. Like you said, they just had 2 big rushes. They had a 55-yard rush by Watson, then a 52-yard rush by McCaskill. So 107 of their 173 total rushing yards came on 2 attempts, and they had 31 attempts on the game. So the other 29 attempts, they had 66 yards. That's pretty good. That's a big improvement from last year. So I think we did a good job on limiting their ground game. My first key to victory was to contain the quarterback. Hunter Watson, he's a mobile quarterback. He's tough. He's a real good runner, not a great passer. He did have that one 55-yard run, again, straight up Broadway, untouched, that scored for them. But I think other than that, I think we did a great job at containing him and making him uncomfortable. So short of one play, I'm going to say we did a pretty good job at containing the quarterback. Now, Tyler, your second key to victory was build the big red wall, and that was having the offensive line protect Maverick and keep him clean. How do you think we did in that regard?
Well, I was actually hoping maybe one sack once we gave up two, though. I really was hoping to keep Maverick clean this game. So I think we did all right. Obviously I'm not happy with 2 sacks. It's a lot better than 3 or 4 sacks, though. But man, I wish we get back to what we was a few years ago. I think we was only like allowing 1 sack per game. So I think we can get back to that later in the season. But I don't feel like we did really well, but I'm not going to be too mad at him because at least Maverick came out not hurt in this game.
Yeah, I think when you drop back 53 times in a game, I think a couple sacks are bound to happen. So, again, I'm not mad at him. I think the offensive line did a really good job for the game. My second key to victory was to keep the big plays in front of you. And again, short of 2 really long plays, that 55-yard touchdown by Hunter Watson, and then that 52-yard run by McCaskill, those were really the only 2 big plays they had. They did have another a tight end catch that went up the seam, but we were able to stop that. It wasn't a big explosive, scoring play. But for the most part, when I was thinking about keeping the big plays in front of you, it was really passing plays. But kind of like we talked about in the preview, there was really going to be a good chance that Longo was going to lean more on the running game just due to the personnel that he had. And it ended up being the running plays that kind of gashed us a couple times. But overall, I mean, with 70 plus plays, only 2 of those were big explosive plays. One of them was a scoring play. I think we did overall a good job at keeping the big plays in front of us. So I'm okay with how we did there. And then your third key to victory, Tyler, you said you want to see a buffet of everything from our offense. You wanted the rushing and the passing attack to both be involved in this game. How do you think we did there?
Well, our like a quarter of our total offense came from the rush. 75% of it came from passing, which I guess coming into the season, hearing or knowing what Maverick can do and us bringing in his offensive coordinator, passing was going to be the main thing. Um, you know, uh, Marvis had a great game. George added to it, and so did Lavelle. I would just like seeing a little bit more rushing into, especially um, later in the game, whenever victory was assured. And yes, we did rush a little bit, but still feel like we was really pass heavy in this game. Well, I mean, obviously he dropped back 51 times. I mean that's really pass heavy.
Yeah, I'd agree there. I think the rushing attack has to be formidable. We have to have the threat of a running game. And not to say we didn't, but I don't think we pressed it kind of as much as we could have, especially late in the game. Like you said, it seems like we could have peppered that in more instead of just taking the air out of the ball and just trying to bleed the clock. Is kind of what it felt like we were doing. But my third key to victory was to win the battle of third downs. And looking at those stats, I mean, it's not even a question. WKU was 11 out of 19 on third downs, which is, I think, a 58, almost 59% conversions. And then Sam Houston was only 2 out of 14. So just a really, really solid effort on both sides of the ball by us on offense, continuing drives, and then on the Sam Houston side when they had the ball, we were just getting them off the field, and then they went for it on 3 times on fourth down, and they were 0 for 3 on fourth down as well. So, really can't say enough good things about the defense and just how many times they bowed up and just stopped them in those short, yards to gain situations and how they did. Now, looking at some of the key indicators for this game, like we always do, the total yards favored WKU 506 to 382. Total first downs for this game, WKU had 26, Sam Houston had 14. Third downs, we just talked about those. WKU 11 out of 19, Sam Houston 2 out of 14. Turnovers, WKU did have 2. That fumble by Musa and then the muffed punt fumble by Katie Hutchinson, and Sam Houston only had 1 with that interception that they threw. Penalties, WKU only had 2 penalties for 17 total yards, while Sam Houston had 7 for 51. It was really, really nice to see us clean up the penalties and not have those drive killing penalties when you've got third and short that back you up to third and medium or third and long. Really, really clean game on the penalties. None in the first half and only a couple there in the second half. So love to see that. And then time of possession, WKU had the ball for 32 minutes and 56 seconds, while Sam Houston had the ball for 27 minutes and 4 seconds. So basically a clean sweep on all those indicators. We did have 1 more turnover than Sam Houston, but luckily that didn't come back to bite us. But now we are going to jump into some grades for this game. So Tyler, what do you have as a grade for the fans at the game?
15,000 being announced, I mean, it was a beautiful day. There was no other in-state college team playing, some local high school games, but, that shouldn't affect the fans. I'm glad that the 15,000 showed up, but, man, that number could have been so much better. I'm going to have to go C minus D plus on this, man. I mean, it was really disappointing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, obviously, we appreciate the 15,000 plus that did show up, and I can't be a full hypocrite and say more people should have showed up when I was unable to. But my tickets were given away; they were used. Somebody was in my seats wearing red and being loud. But man, this is a game in the opener, week 0, with, like you said, no really other college football games competing for it. Especially the local other, Louisville, UK weren't playing. Perfect weather outside, 84 degrees. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't chilly. Just don't understand why we can't get 18,000, 18 to 20,000 on just a perfect football weather game. So I'm going to give the fans a C as well. Just really want to see us make a push and get more fans in the stadium. What about the grade for the offense? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm not going to be mad with 506 total yards of offense. I don't think anybody can be mad at that. The only thing that I would say clean up is, obviously the drop passes at the beginning, which I think they will. It did get better as the game progressed. Sacks, we gave up 2 sacks, but, you drop back 51 times, it's bound to happen. I'm going to give the offense a in this one.
Yeah, that's an easy A for me as well. I mean, the offense was clicking, even though it felt like we weren't as executionally sound as we could have been as far as some drops and some execution. Maybe left some points off the board, but like you said, hard to be mad at over 500 yards of offense, 26 first downs, 400 yards passing. Just an overall great game by the offense. That's an easy A for me. What about your grade for the defense?
Defense did good. It was really a breath of fresh air to see us go against a kind of a mobile QB and him just not slice us up all night long, or have a running back or 2 running backs. Really just make us pay for any mistakes that we made. It was great seeing the defense be able to, stop the long passes. I think Hunter's longest pass was maybe 32 yards. Mavericks was 55 yards. Um, so it was just great to see defense hold up to there. I would like to see a few less points, but I mean, mistakes happen. I'm gonna give them an A as well.
Hey, defense only gave up 17 points. 7 of those were on that scoop and score. So, man, the defense, that's an easy A for me. I think they balled out, they bowed up, they showed out. Again, I mentioned the 9 tackles for loss earlier. I don't know how long it's been in a game since we had that many tackles for loss in a conference game. I started to go back and look it up, but I just realized how long that was probably going to take to find a game where we had that many. So I'm super proud of the defense. I hope it's a trend that continues. I hope it's not just Sam Houston's offensive line wasn't that good or that great. I hope we're really kind of showed just how good we can be, and I hope it continues, with North Alabama and Toledo coming up real quick. What about your grade for the special teams?
Special teams can't have anything but an A. Yes, we had a messed up, punt return. As I say, accidents happen. Yes, it cost us, 7 points, but in the long run, um, I mean, we still was a pretty dominant victory. So, between you know Cole's great punting and then Cannon's leg, man, do we have a new Legatron right here? That's the question. I feel like we do. The dude is a great kicker. I'm I'm gonna give special teams an A as well.
Yeah, pretty easy A for me as well. Quite frankly, I think all 3 of our guys are kickers, John, Jack, and Cole. I think all 3 of them might be Legatron, man. They all showed out. KD, had a ball that bounced off his shoulder. Again, not going to hold that against him. I'm sure he's going to learn from that when they have the film breakdown and study for that if he hasn't already today. He'll learn to get away from that ball and not let it hit him and touch him. I guarantee that. But yeah, special teams is an easy A. That was a dominating performance by them. What's your grade for the coaching in this game?
All right, so coaching, they did clean up the, uh, I guess the play calling, or telling the receivers, "Hey, you gotta watch that ball come into you, and you gotta make sure you catch it." Really, my only criticism of the coaching would probably be, you're up 41-24 late in the game. Why risk leaving Maverick in? Especially if you're just going to hand the ball off. I'm sure players have been hurt by leaving them in, just and he just turned to his side, or at least pitching, or hand the ball off. But I was kind of figured they may take him out and throw in the second string QB, but I think all together, I'm gonna give coaches an A in this one.
Yeah, those late game injuries do happen, and we actually saw it in the Sam Houston game last year. That was the game that River Helms got hurt in with just a minute or two left in the game, and at that point, the game was not in doubt. And he just took a bad hit, ended up hurting his shoulder, and didn't play again last season, and obviously transferred out. But as far as the coaching grade, it was a nice breath of fresh air to have an offensive coordinator that really mixed things up on offense. Man, we didn't have the Will Friend predictable run, pass every first, second, third down. Then we converted so many of those third downs at times that was an Achilles heel last year. It was just really nice and refreshing to see Rick Bowie out there calling plays, mixing things up, getting a lot of different players involved, a lot of different looks. And we have so much talent. I mean, we talked about that all off season when we did the position breakdowns, that people didn't know who some of these guys were, the running backs, wide receivers, etc. But we had so much talent. And it was nice to see Bowie and Maverick just spread that ball around and keep Sam Houston guessing. Over 500 yards of offense, defense balling out. Devon Brown, his first game calling a defensive strategy. Hard to complain about the coaching, man. It's an A all around and easy for me. And what about your overall grade for this game, this 41-24 victory versus Sam Houston?
I mean, I got 4 A's and one D plus. I'm I'm gonna have to go with A in this one.
Yeah, it's pretty easy A for me as well. I mean, really solid and convincing victory. Never, even though we were down early in the second half, it really never felt in doubt, especially as quickly as we responded with our own touchdown and then forced a punt and then another touchdown. And then we were just on cruise control. That offense at that point was clicking and we put that game away. Defense kept showing up. Really liked what I saw. That was just an impressive opening victory and really puts us in the driver's seat at this point for Conference USA and just how good this season can be. Now, another first time discussion that we're going to have, it kind of following up with when we do the MVT, the most valuable topper discussion before every game, just looking back after the game and just deciding who we think our player of the game was. I think there's a couple obvious choices for this game, but Tyler, who would you say was your player of the game for this victory?
I know who I want to give it to. I'm going to give to someone who is also very deserving. I'm going to go with Matthew Henry on this one. 7 catches, like 148 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 55. Maverick is very deserving because, you drop back 51 times, you throw 33 passes, you hit 401, three TDs and a rushing TD. But I'm going to go with wide receiver in this one.
Yeah, I think Matthew Henry is going to be a problem all season. I mean, every time the ball was thrown his way, it just seemed like he was behind the defense. Showed off a lot of speed, showed good hands. Early in the first half, he actually got knocked out of the game. Holding our breath. I was glad to see him come back out for warm ups at halftime and be back in the game in the second half. So healthy there. But my player of the game, I'm going to go with the guy I had in the pregame as my MVT. I'm going with Maverick McIver. I mean, heck of a debut. It's hard to argue against a WKU quarterback and the expectations that we have. I mean, we just have, we're going to be the best quarterback in the conference. We're going to plug and play a guy that's going to throw for, 4,500 to 5,000 yards and, near the nation's lead in yard and touchdowns. And Maverick came in and did just that 401 yards, 4 total touchdowns, just led this team to a victory. And really, I think has all of us just thinking how good and how special a season this could be if that continues, and quite frankly, if it gets better. We've talked about all recap here about there's things to clean up on, and passes that were dropped, execution that could have been better, a couple turnovers that happened, and that's scary because we had a really good game. But I think Maverick is my player of the game. And then before we jump out, I want to talk about the post game spaces that we did. Was able to do that about 30 minutes after the game went final. Had put that out a couple weeks ago as a poll. Did people that listen and follow us want to see us do that again like we did last season? Put it out there, and basically everybody said yes. So we ran the spaces last night about 30 minutes after the game, and had a ton of people tune in. Man, I mean, I think at one point we had 20 plus people in the spaces. I think we had 122 that were active in the space at some point or another. Of course, people are jumping in and out. It wasn't 122 all at once, but we had just a good discussion for a little over an hour. I think it was about an hour and 7 minutes. People started to trickle out. It got down to just a few of us. Had a lot of people that came in there and shared their thoughts and ideas on the game. Even had some Sam Houston burners come in there, and we're trying to get rowdy, try to get a little bit chirpy, running their mouth. Sorry, I had to control that chaos. I had to remove and mute those guys. But I mean, overall, I think that's a really fun exercise that I'm looking forward to doing the rest of the season. Just grew in popularity every single game last year, and that first game, post game space was really encouraging. And I think, if the people that join in us enjoy it, I think I'll also enjoy it. And Tyler, I know it's a little tougher because you're driving back to Glasgow. That's quite a little haul. But hopefully, like you did last year, hopefully you get to jump in the future. But just a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the game overall, even though I didn't get to be there, just watching it on TV. Really looking forward to the North Alabama game coming up this coming Saturday. Obviously, we'll preview that in just a couple of days as we get closer to midweek next week. But man, just a convincing victory. Answered a lot of questions that we had about this team. Things that we didn't know until the lights were on, and seeing how these players would perform. And I think almost every player checked every box, and I enjoyed what I saw. Convincing victory. and looking forward to how this season's going to play out. So, Tyler, hit us with your final words and then take us on out of here.
I mean, I honestly didn't know Sam Houston had so many fans that they could make so many burner accounts. Uh, that's there was a lot of them, and yes, I miss this um space this X spaces after this last game. I plan on being there later in the season because it is awesome having like a little call-in show. I feel like a lot of fans need that time to talk about either a win or a loss or what they like, what they didn't like. It just harkens back to a simpler time, if you ask me. And I think it's awesome that that Topper Talk's able to give the fans that. But yeah, the game was great. I have absolutely nothing to complain about. Maybe clean up some of those turnovers. One you could not help. Conference USA refs need to speed up the replay, especially when that targeting call was overturned, which once you watch the replay, wasn't targeting at all. Sam Houston fans, I don't know anything about the 7-year eligibility. Talk to NCAA, take your gimpy armed QB who can't throw.
Cope.
Cope losers. Go back down to Texas. Enjoy your season. I don't know how many games you're going to win, how many games you're going to lose. I'm hoping you lose a whole lot more than you win, but so be it. Topper fans, I feel like we got a great team this season. I feel like Mavericks own it. I feel like the wide receiver is going to be playing good. The whole offensive unit is going to gel. Defense is coming around. It was great being able to watch them really shut down a rushing attack in the first game. Now I'm sure that's going to continue to only get better later in the season. But yeah, let's go Tops. With that, Moff, who has it better than us, man?
Nobody, buddy. You know it.
Go Tops.
Go Tops. Later, guys.
See y'all.